survive, just to avoid crisis and things like that. So it is quite a big problem, and sometimes it's not a question of how generous we are as a public in donating blood. It's a question of whether they are prepared to actually keep it well. Do they have the reagents, the right packaging, and the facilities to to keep it fresh? Is that the word I'm looking for? Viable, yes.
Many questions up to be asked. Demands are being made. The sentiment is that, or the expression has been made, that the health ministry slept on the job. The Ministry of Health does not seem to have made any efforts to address the urgent situation, namely that the entire country only has 7,500 units of blood against the 164,000 that they require yearly. The cost to transfusion services includes collection of blood, which requires storage in sterile bags, testing and screening, as well as delivery. By supporting Kenya, PEPFAR, the cornerstone of the U.S. Global Health Assistance, wanted to ensure quality assurance in HIV programs. KNBTS records show that these services were once done at hospitals, but it was cumbersome to ensure the transfused blood was clean, that is free of infection. So, that should scare you off. It should knock your socks off with a bit of fear, realizing that even some of the blood then available is not infection-free. From 2004 to date, PEPFAR has disbursed 7.3 billion shillings, which catered for 100% of the services from a centralized point: buildings, vehicles, staff salaries, blood collection and screening for HIV, syphilis and hepatitis C, information systems and policy guidelines. So they funded this thing 100%. And look, they gave ample warning, and they said we are pulling out. They didn't just stop. They said we're pulling out over time. They didn't even remove it at once. They started reducing the amounts that they were giving, and they said, folks, you need to be ready to be able to do this on your own.
Kindly. Clearly we did not get that memo. And I understand there was even a plan. It's back to our usual sentiment of there being poor implementation strategies.
Like we said, KMBTS will be with us tomorrow to answer some of these questions, because it's necessary that we have a clear picture of what the situation is, and going forward, what are we really going to do.
Now, would you... there's another story on page 3 that has me smiling. Because I find it a little humorous. Now, a retiree's rare generosity to pregnant women has been halted. We are told a man has been dishing out money randomly, making his children concerned that he might deplete his savings. The court agreed that his children and put a plug on his philanthropy. So the High Court has barred the 61-year-old from accessing his bank account after his children complained that he would deplete his pension. He was gifting pregnant women 2,000 each. My question would be, isn't it his right to do whatever he wants
to do with his own money? His children are afraid that if he's ever going to, knock on heaven project. If he's going to knock on heaven's door and there's nothing left for them, of course they're worried.
You need to be aware that I am 61 years old.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not knocking at death's door.
Why are you making this?
I'm being sensitive.
Oh, okay.
No, by the time he's...
Half an hour ago, you were blushing. Now you're being sensitive. City, what's going on?
It's the weather.
Blame it on the rain.
Yeah.
Climate change.
But I think what she meant was that by the time he is knocking on heaven's door, he will have finished his money if he keeps at it with the 2,000.
There's a little detail here of responsibility. And children also have rights. If you talk of his rights,
so
he has them. Yes.
Oh, come on.
If they're still dependents, they do. That's why there's that term dependence. If they're adults, that's a totally different matter altogether. But if they are at an age where it is required or mandated that the parent looks after them, then they do have a say on what you have.
But they were in court, right?
Yes.
And so according to the laws of Kenya, a minor will not give testimony unless in special circumstances. So they were all four children were in court.
Were they all adults?
Yeah.
But we're saying that they were not under 18.
We are assuming that because they're the ones
not under 18.
They weren't represented.
They were the ones.
But are you saying that if you are under 18, you're not even allowed to be in court?
Well, you can be in court, but according to this report, the four siblings told the court that their father needed care.
36-year-old son.
Voila.
And rare. It is rare, if it's not impossible, to find a selfless stranger dishing out gifts, leave alone money. So he says the JKK that's a fake name they're using. His case is special. His son told the court that he was too generous, that he splashed his pension on strangers, risking emptying his account as soon as his good deeds, or if his good deeds are not tamed. So he said, and however, he said that he's not just gifting everyone, he's specifically gifting pregnant women, and he finds this quite troubling.
You like that, Siti?
I find this very interesting. But then they took issue with it and the court agreed. I would have wondered
what
if
exactly
he was...
the court agree with
the son's sentiment.
That he should not be spending his money anyhow.
Spending this money
if I don't... Have they stated what the case actually was? Because this is what is being reported. If they reported that this was somebody who was actually even endangering his own life or stripping himself of a likely livelihood or putting himself in a position where he himself may be in want and or probably just leading himself to destitution, I don't know what the case was.
But
in this case, they've actually stopped him from accessing his account.
Yeah.
Actually, don't even touch the money.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
One would need to know what the case was, because for you to be able to do that and for the judge to agree with you, it must have been a compelling case.
Yeah, because anyway, the judge heard that the situation had deteriorated such that JKK, a man born in Kenyaga, needed care and someone to manage his account.
See?
So I would question
now
if
his mental capacities.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you aren't pregnant, I'm told you're given 1,000 shillings only.
Or some kind of fetish there with pregnant women.
Because they know him better, I think they would be able to judge whether this is just philanthropy or whether there's a bit of a twist to it. So hopefully, if he's not well, he will get well soon. But I thought this was an interesting story to highlight. It's on page 3 of the Standard if you want to take a look at it and see for yourself what JKK, as he's being called, was up to. Yeah.
Today's pullouts is the home and away in the Standard, looking at real estate. Rather, today's magazine looking at real estate in the country and some worrying trends that we see. Auctioneers stuck with homes nobody can buy. And in this case, where people are now not able to sell, or rather not able to pay their loans that they may have taken for mortgages and such. Unfortunately, the situation that we see is getting a little bit more dire. And they're stuck with stock worth billions that they cannot sell. And just looking at some of those numbers, 146.1 million, 9 residential hotel apartments in Mombasa, 500 million, Upper Hill Hotel, 9-story commercial property worth 285 million in Nakuru, 3-bedroom villa in the Great Rift Valley Lodge, 50 million, penthouse in Kileleshwa, 50 million, 104.5 million shillings serviced apartments in Parklands. So this is interesting because it has taken a snapshot around the country. It's not just in Nairobi where this problem is. It's a countrywide problem where even the one that you can imagine, you sell off a piece of property that somebody has not been able to pay for with the hopes that somebody's going to pick it up really quickly. But even the pickup is not happening. People either are not interested, but the more likely scenario is that people don't have the money.
And the institutions that are behind this
people don't have the money they're asking for.
And
the report is that only 1 in 10 such properties get taken up. Now, the question that I would ask is, see, when you have a situation such as this one, where it is clear that things aren't what you call normal, it isn't business as usual.
As usual, yes.
Should you then not find solutions which are also not usual?
Exactly. Yes. Because if they're taking this property from the people who haven't been able to sell them off,
what makes you think somebody else is going
to buy it?
Yes.
Because maybe they were assuming these are just not diligent business people, but clearly there seems to be a bigger problem than them just not being able to pay
If you look at the rate of defaults, if you talk to anyone in the banking sector, it is profound. And if you look at the history of many of these people, there are people who in the past have borrowed money and have paid.
Yes. So, but the fact that they got those loans
means that they had proved that they could pay.
At some point they could.
Yeah.
Or yes. Now, take 2 examples. Last year, the national government issued instructions to county governments that they were being given money. One, they were halting all development projects. They were being given money to offset pending debts. Now, imagine if you work for the county or even the national government, because the national government also owes its vendors money, and you haven't been paid for a year. Then extend your horizons and think about 4 years.
Yes.
If it was a bank loan, how much interest do you think will have been heaped on that loan? And by that, yes.
And how far to the bare bone do you think they would have stripped you to get their money back?
And by the way, the interest doesn't stop just because you can't pay.
No.
Keeps going.
It continues compounding.
Yes, exactly. Now, so there's a situation that is facing many, many business people.
Yeah.
People have gone under. Some have died. Yes, I am saying that, yes, we have a situation that a false boom, so to speak, in the property market. That particular bubble has burst.
The bubble has burst. So there was a bubble. At this point, it has burst. We'll be looking at that also in the next hour and talking about really what is going on with properties in this country. What are people able to afford or not? This is Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in the Situation Room this morning as we look at issues that are happening in our world. We'll be back in a minute to take a short break, and we come back and we continue with this.
Chilled Spice.
This is KTN News.
Marhaba mjukuu wangu, kwema?
Kwema.
Mbona unkaa kama kijiti hivi?
Babu, unavyoniona hivi, nitoka majengo. Nenda Kisumu ndogo.
Kisa na maana?
Tafuta mchumba.
Wewe mchumba waangalia nini? Vigezo gani?
Mwili, mapambo. Utakuta mtu ambaye nikimwona hivi, kitembea rangi tu mimi.
Salala.
Kupata hekaya za babu, bonyeza *811 *912#. Waburudishe jamaa na marafiki na sikiza tune yako leo.
And the lovely Trix Ngado is here with us as we look through what's going on. I'm Ndioko in the studio with City Muga, and we continue looking at what's going on in the country. City, what else do you see?
What else do I see? Well, what I see is this. Our papers seem to always get the priorities a little mixed up in terms of what is important and what they think may actually sell the paper. If you look at the headline of the Standards, why, I mentioned in passing, why Raila brought back ODM rebels from the fold.
Yeah.
You know, the story isn't new with political parties. It's being presented as though it's this new thing. It isn't new. No. Just the law prohibited people from jumping from one party to the other around the electioneering time.
Yeah.
But people moving from party to party, not new. And the reasons being given, if you read the story and the headlines, you'll find there's a little disconnect. This has happened all the time. People have left the party. I'll give you 2 examples. In the 2013 elections, I know there's one particular governor in what we call the former Nyanza area who actually vied on what we call a PDP party.
Yeah.
Got elected. The MP from my constituency also stood on a PDP party, got elected. 2017 elections, they were back in ODM. It's normal. It's not even something unusual. Somebody may lose at the party primaries, as we call them, or the elections, and they feel, no, I feel I'm a little popular. We had cases of even MCAs. I'm giving these 2 examples because it is assumed that these are things that are happening now, and it's being presented as though it's happening now. It happened from time immemorial.
It's always happened in this way.
It has. Yes, it has. How many photo ops do you see of parties welcoming new members? Being given a T-shirt,
and they were in other parties prior to that, and would have sworn along those party lines previously.
Or they swore.
Right.
And some left these parties, they forsook the parties and spoke ill of those parties, and then did a complete turnaround.
Even
and
spoke ill of the party leaders and talked about how terrible they were in terms of moving the
country
country
But in coming back, they spoke about just how misguided they had been, and now that they had seen the light.
Yeah.
here they were.
I think while this might not have been a new thing, or is not a new thing, I think we need, as we approach such stories as the press, to think larger and find different angles that make it new, even if it's not a new story. So perhaps educating the public on the rules and what would inform political party decisions and why these people would strategize in this particular ways, rather than just pointing it out as if it was some new phenomenon that's happening.
Well, there's also the interesting thing. The new LSK president,
Harvey?
yes, reveals a 100-day plan and wants 41 judges sworn in.
I have a question before you even get onto the story. Why is it always 100 days?
Yeah.
Everybody who
Donald Trump.
100
Uhuru
days.
Kenyatta.
100 days.
Sonko.
100 days. Buhari. 100 days. What is it with this 100
It has a
days?
nice
Is it
ring
after?
to it.
It sounds nice, right? In 100 days,
Even
I would
Moi
have done.
Kibaki, I think, had 100 days.
Yeah, you never really say 3 months and 10 days. 100 days, and it's that time with which are we then saying
half a
within
year.
100? Right?
Yeah.
Are we then saying within 100 days? Had you not done this, then you would not have
You know,
succeeded.
Because
moment-
they shoot themselves in the foot, I think.
I think so.
They
You know,
do
the
that.
word 100 is associated with many things in our minds. It's a century, if I'm not wrong.
It is. Yes.
That's one.
Uh-huh.
There's 100 shillings.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and if one gets to 100 years of age, they have really tried. It is a captive number. So when you mention it vis-a-vis a political setup, you mention it vis-a-vis an administrative issue like this one, it sounds like you've taken a definitive step in ensuring that certain problem is solved.
Right. And if you get 100%, you're perfect, right?
Yes, exactly. That's the perfect score. 10 out of 10,
Yeah.
100 out of 100. It's never 200.
No.
It's all. Ask the question, why are exams not out of 200? Why is it 100? So 100 is a word that we associate with everyday life. But it also shows that he is a man of action, and he's determined, and he's
Here's a plan.
hit the ground running.
It's
And there's
not a long
plan.
time, oh?
Yeah. It's not.
Then you pause and ask, this issue of having judges sworn in, who has the last word?
Yeah, you can say all you want to say until you're blue in the face.
It's not up to you.
But if the executive and the judiciary is not in tandem with this 100-day plan of yours, my friend.
Yesterday we had an issue of the matter, the small matter of the audited. The audited, yes.
But Trix whispered, 41. Yeah, he actually plans to hire 41 judges
And you
in
do
these 100
understand
days.
what's happening with the judiciary lately, right? How is he going to overcome all those difficulties and the lack of goodwill that the judiciary is facing? At the same time, I feel like he's just riding on the wave of support based on his, being voted in.
No, but he's right to do so.
But then, is it realistic?
Or
It
is he
doesn't
sending
have
out
to
a
be.
message?
Yeah.
Not necessarily that he
Yeah.
wants
It
to
doesn't
hire
have to
these
be that.
41,
Just
but he's sending out a
carrying it
message
on as
of
well.
the necessity
when
of the
the
same.
Jubilee government told Kenyans that one of the things they were going to do for schools is provide all school children laptops.
I now realize that this thing that I've just said, it wasn't necessarily that they were going to provide them, but they saw the need for technology to be the cornerstone of education in this country.
Yes.
And that was how they were passing the message.
Yeah,
What-
In
and they
this
were the
case,
digital guys.
Harvey also understands that we need more to sort out this problem
it's
of
political
capacity.
messaging.
Exactly.
And you, as a reader and as a journalist, we need to understand
Right.
when politicians are just making political utterances and when they mean what they are
say.
saying. A lot of the times it's just political utterances to achieve a certain goal. And the goal is I need to appear like a man of action, a man who has plans.
Knows what
and
he's talking
yes,
about.
and so I'm giving myself time, and it's in 100 days.
So this article should be a sort of big question as to whether this plan could actually work, and it should interrogate this plan rather than just place it there.
He's
as if
promoting himself
Yeah.
by
Yes, he is.
claiming that he has an agenda, and this is not the only one.
yeah, but then we are buying it instead
Yes,
of
he has
interrogating.
other things he has said he has in a pipeline that he wants to do. So people who elected him and people in the LSK can now look forward. This is not a bad strategy.
Politically.
No,
speaking,
it's not.
it's
Because if you say and state out in the open the things you plan to do. You're essentially saying, judge me by this.
Yes, but then as a journalist, you should be aware that this is a strategy, and you should be aware of the other times where it has failed or it has just been said for the sake of being saying. And therefore, when angling a story, you need to approach it in a different way so that you're not literally just dishing the same thing to your audience.
Yes, but this was part of an interview. Now, in an interview, you will ask questions and the person will
He'll
respond.
answer, and this is one thing.
Yes. But again, Trix, you're right. Even if it's an interview, it should be analyzed further and say, okay, look,
what does this actually mean?
We've had other people in your position making not similar utterances, but
the same
promises, yes. And we've seen the outcome of some of those things.
And the insiders in this who know whether this is realistic or not. So I would also love to hear another voice that comes in and said, wait a minute, hold on. This is why this has not been done by predecessors. So the fact that this guy is promising this or just doing,
He's gone into details, by the way, because he hopes to meet the AG. He also hopes to meet the Chief Justice and also hopes to meet the President to give advice on possible solutions to this.
Okay.
You imagine that these three people don't know what the problem is.
That's it.
Quite aware of what the problem is.
They know exactly, but as president of the LSK, that position actually gives him a certain capacity and power.
Speaking of problems, I have an 800 billion shilling problem.
Where?
800 billion.
Yes, only. The US says that an amnesty offered by Kenya in 2018 facilitated the laundering of more than 800 billion shillings because the taxman did not have a policy to monitor the inflows. In 2016, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich offered an amnesty designed to facilitate tax payments. It enabled Kenyans to repatriate money from offshore accounts without revealing the source. According to the International Narcotics Control Strategy Money Laundering Report released by the U.S. Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, how's that for a mouthful? Yesterday, the Kenya Revenue Authority failed to adopt a policy to confirm if the money was actually returned. KRA has been unable to trace approximately $7.9 billion or to confirm that the registered funds were not transferred out of Kenya again, raising concerns the amnesty facilitated laundering of illicit cash. Mr. Rotich has since been dropped from the cabinet. Did you know this?
The amounts that they're mentioning may actually fall short.
Could be less, could be more.
No,
Could be
not
more.
could be. More. Remember, if you're talking about money, it isn't money that we've been reading about last year and this year.
No.
It begins from the saga of Kenya Power. It begins from the saga of Goldenberg. It begins from the saga of Anglo Leasing. All these things, a lot of these monies were sent out of the country. But the figures also are not just the few billions. This one I'm going to say the few billions they're talking about. It's likely to be in the trillions that have found their way back into the country.
Into the country.
Yes.
We had the EACC head here and talking about cash flows that sometimes they're even unable to trace. It has left Kenya, it's gone to Milan, it's in Rome, and then it is in Mauritius, and then it's in India, before then it finds its way back into the country. By the time you do this entire trace, actually figuring out where it went, it could be quite a walk in the
park.
park.
By the way, please remember that it is a business. There are people whose job it is
to move money,
to make money anonymous.
Yes, to make it disappear.
It's what they do.
Offshore accounts and whatnot. And obviously, there are people who actively seek for loopholes such as this.
You know,
to take advantage.
It's very rich of the Americans to go about this business. There's a place called Delaware.
They're the masters of this game,
US,
no?
Where you can walk in and register a company almost immediately. It's almost instantaneous. All right? So the issue of applying some of these rules, the US themselves don't quite apply these rules to their citizens.
Yeah.
Of course not.
They themselves, within their shows and outside, just immediately outside the borders, they also have facilities that offer these offshore banking. And it is with the knowledge of the US. By the way, it's a profitable business.
It is.
For the longest time, countries like Austria, countries like Switzerland were known to actually be havens for keeping money. Their laws permitted it.
Yeah.
They were not breaking anyone's law. Switzerland was neutral. So if you're
interested,
it's a nice place to keep your money because it's neutral. You know, And their laws would not permit that money to be repatriated. With time, these changes have been made. But this is a practice that takes place all over the world.
Right.
This is a case where the U.S. is talking with a forked tongue.
In this case, and if we have the opportunity to shine the light somewhere else, why not use it?
Yes.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We've been looking at what's been going on in the papers. We're going to go in depth into some issues in a bit. We'll take a look at what's happening on the roads and see where you should or should not go in a short while. Keep it here. We'll go into the hour and we'll talk about really what is happening with the BBI, and on the other hand, what is happening with real estate in the country and how you can be protected, or in this case, make sure that you remain afloat. Kenya's biggest conversation. This is the Situation Room.